Missouri star wide receiver Luther Burton III was unable to capture his 2023 success in 2024, but he remains one of the best wide receivers in the 2025 NFL draft class. What's the perfect fit for him as in terms of an NFL team? Well, we got that coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast. Cover your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our every day. As you know, I got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Keep talking to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ, man, and the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. DP, today's show, man, we're going through perfect pairing, right? We picking a prospect, the NFL draft prospect. We're picking a team, and we're saying why this is a mutually beneficial situation. And then coming up next, man, we're going to talk about biggest draft storyline. DP said he got a curveball, a little bit of a fastball, right, of who he's picking as the draft storyline. So I would definitely stay tuned for that. And then what? We're going to wrap this thing up with dames, dudes. Yes, you know how this goes. It's my favorite segment. My name's not on it. I just like putting DP on the hot seat. But DP, let's have some fun, man. Perfect pairing. Let's get this thing going.
You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, so perfect prospect pairing for me, Keith. I look at Missouri star wide receiver, the 5'11", 210-pound Luther Burton III. And I know you look at, for those who check the box score, last year he had over 1,200 yards receiving and 9 touchdowns on the season. This year he has less than 706 touchdowns. I get it. The offense has not been good in Missouri, quarterback issue, stuff like that. So don't look at the box score, look at the talent. I'm pairing him to the NFC South team, to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Chris Godwin, I think it was a torn ACL, got hurt this year. So he's out, and then he was on the expiring contract. And he was having one of his best seasons of his career, getting ready to cash in again. And I looked at their needs on their roster, and wide receiver is a big need for them, right? Sterling Shepard, who is 32, about to be 32 years old. Chris Godwin's about to be 29. He'll be coming off IR. You got Mike Evans, who's 31, who just recently turned 31 not too long ago. Jalen McMillan and Trey Palmer, they've drafted over the last 2 to 3 years. Got Raheem Jarrett and some other, just kind of cast the names, right? I think for me, it's one of two things. Even if you bring back Chris Godwin, I would still draft Luther Burton. You know what I mean? But especially if you don't bring back Chris Godwin, I'm drafting Luther Burton because I think Luther Burton can fill that Chris Godwin, cut that slot receiver, run after catch threat role in this offense, right? You got Mike Evans, who's going to be a productive, big body, big play X receiver. Jalen McMillan can be that movement Z type receiver. Him and Burton in this offense can actually be interchangeable, where they both can play the Z, both can play the slot role and have success and kind of create advantageous matchups for Baker Mayfield, a target. But I think putting Luther Burton in this offense, yes, he had a down season this year, and I get it. But for me, he's still a first-round caliber talent and dynamic, athletic, quick twitch, strong after the catch, strong-handed. This is always a situation where you watch the film tells us everything, but it's still context that's missing. What is he asked to do? What routes are he asked to run in this offense? This is not a pro-style offense that Missouri runs. And not having high caliber quarterback play, things like that, it definitely hindered his production this season. But production doesn't travel, and that's something that people got to really pay attention to. I don't care how many yards you rush for in college, that crap don't go to the NFL. It's a whole clean slate once you get there. Do you have the talent to make plays? Luther Burton III absolutely does. And I think also putting them in the room with a Mike Evans to learn from him, soak up as much knowledge as possible. He can walk in there as a rookie, but then walk out of there as a rookie after his rookie year, being top 2 on the team in yards and targets for Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, DP, I like that pairing, right? And I like that pairing so much that I actually had that in my latest mock draft. And so I'm in full support of it. Like, and I just like it overall. It just makes it's one of those situations where you talked about Chris Godwin getting hurt, right? It just makes too much sense to put a guy who's a slot dominant player, right? Good run after the catch ability, some explosiveness, XYZ. It just makes too much sense to just put him in that position. So I'm right along with you. I like the Luther Burden. And then this is the other part. DP, you went a wide receiver to NFC South team. My perfect pairing is a wide receiver to NFC South team. I'm going with Texas wide receiver Matthew Golden to the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers have a few draft picks. I don't know if they're still tied up right with the Chicago Bears, but I'm going to say this about Matthew Golden. I don't know if his seasonal production is going to be there, but I'm going to be more aggressive on his grade than what I think a lot of people in the draft community are. What I've seen at Houston paired with the flashes that I'm seeing at Texas is just one of those things where I'm just going to trust my eyes, right? I know what my eyes are telling me, and just go with who the prospect is himself. And I like Matthew Golden. And I looked at the Carolina Panthers. We talked about this. Was that last week when we talked about kind of just like Xavier Legette is like clearly like the guy that's just more explosive. Like he's just dude, right? And it's clear that they have one dude and then not any other dudes, right? And so I look at a Matthew Golden and I go back to when Bryce Young was at Alabama. It was these style wide receivers, right? We even talked about Carolina potentially trying to trade for John Mechie from the Houston Texans because he's going to need vertical separators, right? Some of those guys that, running those deep overs and those crossing routes and things like that, and he could get the football to them because he sees them as open, right? And I look at Matthew Golden as one of those quick twitch, good route runners, has some explosiveness to him, that could be a good pairing if they don't go wide receiver in the first round and they want to wait a couple rounds to get a guy. I think they could be able to get Matthew Golden.
No, that's a good fit, you know what I mean? Because and I think for Golden, on the season this year, he is 500, almost 600 yards receiving and everything. But as we talked about on yesterday's pod, Keith, Quinn Ewers and this passing offense has been so inconsistent, like games where they should have taken a chokehold or a stronghold over the opponent. They have it, and they have. Don't get me wrong, they got a lot of weapons, so you don't expect Matthew Golden and some of these other receivers to have 13, 14, 1,500 yards and be a Bolitnikov, a finalist, because there's so many weapons on this offense. But still, he's playing good ball, Keith. I like that call out, putting them in Carolina.
Yeah, and just looking at their draft picks real quick, DP. It looks like they have at least their first, a second, and a third, and a couple fourths, right? So they should be in a pretty decent spot as far as being able to have draft picks.
No, and I mean, for Carolina, that's why it was so important for Bryce to come off of the benching and play well, because now you could use that draft allocation or those draft picks and the capital they have and allocate that to improving this roster, improving the defense, improving the wide receiver core, right? Just get better in multiple areas rather than, man, we got to find a new quarterback. For them, this Bryce Young's resurgence has been good for him. Right now, will this continue into next year? We'll see, but at least you don't have to draft one right now, and that's probably the biggest thing. Then, to be honest, if Bryce Young falls on his face next year, you in contention for Arch Manning, and you feel good about it. So it's like whatever, you know what I mean? But they're in a good spot. They're in a good spot.
DP, I think we could probably say this, right? That if the Carolina Panthers are up,
Peyton Manning and the family.
I don't think they letting that go down. They're not letting it go down like that.
They might tell David Tepper to sell the team before they let that happen.
That's not happening. But DP, let's keep this thing going and flowing, man. You said you have a draft storyline. I'm ready to hear this draft storyline. So we're gonna get into that coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. My draft storyline, biggest draft storylines from week 14. Keith, I'm following up with your perfect pairing, Keith. And for me is that Matthew Golden is the best receiver on the Texas Longhorns offense. And to me, you said you might be higher on him than most. I'm probably going to be right there. He's going to end up being a day 2 pick for me. Like when I see this young man and I watch, you look at the body type, 6 foot even, almost 200 pounds even, 195, 200. He's solidly built. He's explosive, quick twitch, good route runner. Is he Isaiah Bond fast? No, there's not many guys that are as fast as Isaiah Bond, right? Isaiah Bond is probably in that close to that Xavier Worthy type speed and acceleration, like just pure burners, right? Like that Jalen Waddle type speed, especially on crossers and things like that. But when I look at, for me, Matthew Golden in that game, I think he was their leading receiver. Like, what I mean? 3 for 3, 73 yards. The average was 24 yards per catch. And it's just, I remember watching one of his routes and I'm just like, why isn't nobody talking about how talking about this dude more? Like, I get it. That's why I said the numbers, when you watch him, when you box score scouting, it could throw you off. Because you're like, man, I'm not watching. I'm not making him a priority. He doesn't even have 800 yards receiving. No, watch him. Like, please get eyes on guys and see exactly what they do, because the movement skills, the route running, the way they attack the ball, the way they get open, those are the things that go to the NFL. The numbers they put up in college, they stay in the college stat book. That doesn't travel. You know what I mean? Like they say, hey, all the riches and glory, all the money you got, it doesn't go anywhere when you die. The same thing for stats. It stays where it is. It doesn't go to the NFL. I think this is a guy who can come in and be an immediate contributor to an NFL offense as that wide receiver 2-3. And I think there's upside for him to be, to be a high target option in a passing offense. That's why when you said putting him in Carolina, I like that a lot, because again, I think, like I said, Panther fans are really high on Jalen Coker. I'm not saying don't be, but he was undrafted for a reason. You know what I mean? Like, he was an undrafted rookie for a reason, and he's a limited athletic profile. He's probably more of that big power slot, like route runner, that if you give him a two-way go, that's how he's going to be able to win. Where, okay, if he's going to be your slot receiver going forward, you got Xavier Legette, you put Matthew Golden as the X and the Z. Now you got guys that really fit what Bryce Young needs, right? Xavier Legette can take the top off and he can make plays at the catch point. He's got to bring down some of those catches that he typically brought down with Spencer Rattler. He's got to do that for Bryce Young. But Bryce Young's game is never has been, is never going to be trucking it 40, 50 yards down the field vertical. That's not his game. You get that horizontal game going, those crossers, the in cuts, things like that, especially forcing teams to play zone. A guy like Matthew Golden absolutely is going to feast in that type of offense with Dave Canales calling plays, because he can get into the zone. He can get into those voids and soft spots, settle in, and be a target there. And then I think he's got some upside after the catch as well to be able to make some plays also. So I just think this is a better football player. I think I've seen some rankings with him in like wide receiver 20, people looking at him as a day 3 pick. And I'm like, guys, I get it. The numbers aren't there. I understand it. But please turn the tape on. This young man is good. Don't get me wrong. I still like Isaiah Bond, but I think he's a better and more polished overall receiver than Isaiah Bond is right now.
I agree with every last one of those words, DP. And it's funny that that's the guy that I chose for my perfect pairing. We just kind of, parlayed off each other, right, with that situation. But I look at it with Matthew Golden, and I think it's this, that people don't really know who he is, right? Or where he came from. Like, it's like, oh, he's just the guy that transferred from Houston, right? But then Isaiah Bond was the guy that transferred from Alabama, right? And it started with that, and then just kind of trickled down into the season. And we talk about the lack of overall production, right? Because I don't think he's had any like big time games. You're talking about 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, right? It's been 5 catches here, 6 catches there, 2 catches, 2 touchdowns, 1 touchdown. Like, it's been very mediocre numbers, but
he's coming off like the best stretch of this season in the past 2 weeks.
Most
Kentucky and Texas A&M, like over 70 yards receiving in both games. Didn't have a touchdown, but like you said, like, I mean, he just makes plays. He's just a good football player that, again, I just look at the quarterback situation like, can we please just play more aggressive, play more consistent? I wonder what it would look like with Arch. Like if Arch was the quarterback the whole season, because Arch is more of a aggressive player down the field, stuff like that. I feel like Matthew Golden is untapped. Like I think it's an untapped resource.
100%. And that's why I think people need to go cut on the Houston film too, because he got a lot. He got the ball at Houston, right? So you can see what he is. But I even look at teams, right? The Dallas Cowboys, right, would be a team for me that you need like a 1-2 punch, like you need a clear number 2 to CeeDee Lamb. I think Matthew Golden could be one of those guys. Another team I look at, the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? You got rid of Deontay Johnson to the Panthers. You have George Pickens. You have Roman Wilson trying to, get back to himself. He would be a good number 2, right? Or just a good mix, because you look at his skill set, and he's not a wide receiver 1. I think he's like he's one of those guys that I call a 1.5, right? That they can show up in high leverage moments. And if you want to swap it out to be like, hey, this guy can, he'll probably be our leading wide receiver because we're going to scheme up a lot of stuff. You trust that he'll get the job done at the end of the day. So I look at, that's what I said. I look at the Cowboys. I look at the Steelers, right? Those are teams that their wide receiver core outside of one guy, I collectively, if you ask me, I think both of those wide receiver cores are overrated. I think people look at them and think that they're set at wide receiver, and I'm like, no, this is actually not good.
Far from it.
Yeah, it's far from it. And he's the type of guy that they scoop up in the second, third round, and then you're like, you know what? Dang, where did Matthew Golden come from? He's a really good football player. So I'm hoping.
I think the Arizona Cardinals would be a good fit for him too.
That's another good one.
They need a guy with his skill set and his profile to pair with a Marvin Harrison and Michael Wilson and stuff, and of course Trey McBride being that next riser into that elite tier of tight. Like the passing of the guard is happening at tight end right now in the NFL. Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, like the Travis Kelce. I'm not saying he's about to retire, but like his best days are long gone. You know what I mean? And like passing that torch, Sam Laporta, stuff like that, like passing that torch to these guys, man, it's been really fun to watch. And I think putting Golden, because they just have the same body type at the receiver position in Arizona. Tall, long, physical, route running, but they need that explosive, dynamic guy that can win and take the top off the defense, that can push you vertical, especially with a guy like Kyler Murray who likes to throw down the field anyway. He wants to throw the long ball. We've seen it with DeAndre Hopkins when he was there, Marquise Hollywood Brown when he was there. Like, I think that would be a very, very good fit for him, for Matthew Go. I don't know. Like, every year we get those hunches about those urges about players. You're like, man, I just got a feeling. Matthew Golden's that guy that I just got a feeling, Keith, that once we get to the draft season, because we know in season it's NFL, it's college football live, right? It's college football on Saturday. Immediately go into NFL, and NFL dominates the week in terms of what people are watching on film and studying. They're like, man, I got to see what my favorite players in the league did, what my favorite team did. How do we win? How do we lose? That's dominated the mind and the content and just a film session for a lot of people, except for people like us. This is our job. I think once we get, truthfully, next month, I think once we get to next month and we get through the college football playoffs, into the NFL playoffs, and team fans are like, and analysts are like, man, I got to start getting into what Senior Bowl prep, stuff like that. Who's in this draft class? I think Matthew Golden's going to be a name that they're going to have to start taking account for and taking notice. And I just got a feeling that's going to be one of those guys that we could see end up being a bet, like being a riser come draft season. When they're during the regular season, it was like, I don't know about this guy. Like, nah, turn the tape on. He's good.
No, I agree with that 100% with DP. Let's keep this thing going and fun, man. And what do we have up next? Dames, dudes. Yep, I'm putting DP on the hot seat. Ask him if he's kicking these guys out the club or if they made it inside the club. DP, let's get this Dames dudes going.
Ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch or an urge in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page when you place your bets. To get in on the action, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You get started with $150 back in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, you'll get started with $150 back in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, to get in on the action, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Guys, never waste a hunch and make every single moment more with FanDuel, an official sports book partner of the NFL. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot for being our everydayers. Dames, dudes, what 5 prospects does Keith have to ask me about after week 14 of college football? Who's getting in? Who has to go back to, well, I mean, I don't know. If you're not in the championship game, you don't get a chance next week. We'll see come bowl season, but let's get it started, Keith.
DP, let's get this thing started, man. First up, I think I know how you feel about this, but I think you got to go ahead and say it and give my guys his flowers again. Syracuse quarterback Kyle McCord. Is he in the club, out of the club?
Oh, yeah, man. I talked glowing about him yesterday, Keith. We moved him into the top 5. He was 26 of 36, 72% completion percentage, 380 yards passing, 3 passing touchdowns. He was surgical against that Miami defense. And I know Miami's defense it's been kind of a turnstile all season, but Kyle McCord played a great game in a game that I think he tweeted out, "You're welcome, Clemson football." He tweeted and tagged Clemson's Twitter page, "You're welcome," for knocking Miami out of the ACC championship game. That was a game we talked about for Miami. You got, you know what I mean? Like, you got to be prepared for it, right? Like, Cam Ward did his part. The defense didn't do theirs in getting timely stops and when they needed to. That's just Kyle McCord wouldn't let him. So, yeah, Kyle McCord gets into the club. You know what I mean? I got a bottle waiting on him. He's getting in.
All right, let's keep this thing going, man. Coming up next, we're going to go with Clemson running back Phil Maffa. In the club, out of the club?
Nah, Phil Maffa's not in the club for me this week, Keith. And this is a guy I really like coming out of the summer. And he was having a good season, 6'1", 230 pounds. He looks these past couple weeks, he's just looked a little, I don't know if he's just like not tired, but now, it goes, how different it is from being the guy that's changing the pace to the guy that sets the pace.
Yeah, yep.
That's dictating pace. Yep. Yeah, it's dictating pace. Like it's a different situation. Now they're game planning for you, like out of the backfield. They know that you're the guy, and he had a solid game against South Carolina, 19 carries, 74 yards. He hasn't scored a rushing touchdown in the last 4 games, and he's got 2 fumbles in the last 4 games. Yeah, he's been trending down really in the last 3 to 4 weeks, the last month. Honestly, his last big game was against Vatech, and that was last month in week 11, so about 4 weeks ago. So, no, he's not getting in the club, man.
Yeah, and it might be a thing, DP, like you said, just the wear and tear. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then usually at this point, right, running backs usually have some type of nagging injury, whether it's some type of ankle or hamstring or, it could be ribs, just something like that. So we'll just continue to monitor that. Obviously, they have Syracuse said thank you. Clemson can go to the ACC championship game and get themselves into the playoffs. All right, next up, DP, Georgia speed wide receiver Arian Smith. In the club, out of the club?
No, he's out of the club, Keith. He started the season fairly well. You know what I mean? 4 of his first 3 games, he was playing well. Big plays, explosive plays. He's got track speed, but Carson Beck targeted him 7 times. He caught 2 of those for 14 yards and 0 receiving touchdowns. He also had 2 drops, and that's been his biggest thing all season. He has, I believe, 9 drops on the season, and it's like when you have that type of speed, man, like, if you could just catch the ball, like you're a weapon. They have to account for you and factor you into the game plan every time you step on the field or you break the huddle. It has to be, where's Waldo and where is number 11? Because his speed is a type of speed you really can't teach. He's a burner, but it's like being a burner doesn't matter if you're not catching the football. That's how you remove the fear factor from your game. And he's done that all season, removing the fear factor from himself because he is a talented guy. But no, he's not in the club. You got to catch the ball and make plays, especially when your offense has been as topsy-turvy and inconsistent as it is. When your quarterback gives you chances, man, you got to reel it in.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. DP, let's keep this thing going and flowing, man. Up next, Georgia Tech quarterback, Mr. Tote the Rock himself, Haynes King, in the club, out of the club.
Oh, man, the king is in. The king's in the castle. Yeah, I'm putting Haynes in, man. He had a great game. Great game against Georgia. 26 of 37, 303 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. But as you said, the Mr. Run the ball himself, 23 carries, 111 yards rushing, and 3 rushing touchdowns as well. Yeah, like that type of performance against the Georgia team where I'm not gonna I kind of was talking to our guy Daniel Harms about this game, before, like early in the week last week. I said this could be a potential trap game for Georgia. Like Georgia team playing physical ball, and you don't see Georgia's defensive line get like dominated in the trenches with the run game like that. But Georgia Tech had no problem going vertical in the run game and just playing power football. That's something Georgia does. And to watch him account for 5 touchdowns or over 400 total yards of offense, man, I don't know what's going to happen with his draft stock, Keith, but I know in terms of getting in the club this week, he's in the club. He balled out. He earned every bit of that.
Yeah, and DP, I think he has another year of eligibility, I believe. Ooh. So he even decided to come back, and you could start pitching the idea that, hey, we can win the ACC next year. Like, and then you're talking about the transfer portal, being able to get guys in there. You almost kind of reinvigorate. There's 2 guys that you look at, right, that's kind of like on a heater right now as far as hot streaks. It's Haynes King, right, with Georgia Tech, that's surprising everybody. And then there's Lenore Sellers, right, the freshman out of South Carolina, that's just simply surprising everybody. So 2 of the hottest names as far as quarterbacking collegiately, right? Like maybe they don't have all the NFL profile and arm talent and things like that, but in college, they are showing that they are a problem and a force to be reckoned with. Let's wrap this thing up with one guy, DP, Mr. Ruben Bain Jr. And I think if there's any name that you're a defensive lineman, right, that's a defensive line name, Ruben Bain. Is he in the club? Out of the club?
Oh man, he is not in the club this week. I love the name, and he's a talented player too. Like we talked about him coming off of his freshman year last year, but in a game where you have Kyle McCord drop back as many times as he did, for you to rush the passer, be on pass rush snaps, 34 snaps in this game, 0 sacks, 0 QB hits, 0 pressures, 0 batted passes. Right, like he went over in this game. And this was a game where you needed you needed him to be the best pass rusher, right? I think their sack leader is Akeem Messador, and then you got Tyler Barron, who Tyler Barron had 3 sacks in this game. His pass rush pass rush win rate was high. The R's and W's be getting me sometimes with that. It's a tongue twister, but for Ruben Bain, man, like this has been a little bit of a disappointing season for him. And I think that next year, like you want to see him bounce back. 6'3", 275. I want him to be in the club because especially for the impact and the stuff he put on film as a freshman. It's like 18 years old. But hey, you give offensive coordinators and offensive line coaches a year to study you, it can change how the game plan is. So now he's got to go back to the drawing board and try to bounce back for next year. But he's not in the club this week.
But DP, it wasn't too bad, man. We went 3 for 5. I know some weeks you go 2 for 5, and then if you're in a really bad mood, right, it's a 1 for 5 situation. But I liked it. I liked it. We let the right guys in the club and into the dames, dudes category. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. Every listener is greatly appreciated here over at Locked On NFL Draft. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. Get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot, for being our everydayers. Guys, on tomorrow's show, we're getting ready to start previewing these championship matchups. On Saturday, a bunch of big games, ACC, Big Ten, and SEC championship game. We're going to tackle the ACC championship game and tell you the prospects that you need to watch on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.